Okay, hello everyone, good morning. My name is Pavel Sladky, I'm a Czech film critic and journalist, and I'm very pleased that I can host this KVIFF talk with Michel Franco. Thank you very much for coming back to Karlovy Vary.
Thank you. I had a great experience last year presenting Memory, and I was very happy to receive an invitation for this year to present Dreams. It's one of the best festivals, the best audience, good film, so gorgeous place, so I'm happy, I'm lucky to be here.
How many films have you seen so far?
My average is one a day. I'm not one of those, you know, that can watch 4 movies a day, like Sergei Loznitsa. Every time we meet, he saw 4 movies a day. I'm a once enough. If there's 2 that I really want to see and there's space between them, then I can, yeah.
In the very beginning, I would like to remind you that we would be happy for your comments or questions as we proceed, so you don't need to wait for some time in the very end of this talk. Just give us a sign and ask your question. There is one straight away. Okay, let's go. Yes, we might hand the microphone. No, microphone is coming.
I just have a follow-up. Why can't you watch one film, more than one film a day? It's because you will have to kind of like experience it, you know, have it in your head, or is it because you're just busy with other things?
Mainly I'm busy with other stuff. Always when I'm asked how I succeed to make a film a year, roughly, or every year and a half, the answer is I have to stop doing other things, both personal stuff and things that I would enjoy to do, and I'm now writing something new, and most of my mind is it becomes a very selfish process too, where I'm looking more in than out of my mind. But you're also right when you say, like, if I'm satisfied with a film, then, you know, that's like I had a good meal and I'm not hungry anymore for the rest of the day. But of course here, if there's 2 things that I really want to watch, and then of course there's the promotion of Dreams, that does take some time and energy, and meeting friends, yeah. But I wish I would have seen more movies. Yeah. At the end, I'm always, when a person like Sergei Loznitsa tells me that he saw 24 movies, I'm a little jealous. On the other hand, I'm here for many days, for the whole festival. So, you know, I slowly watch a number of films.
My name is Paul Katzenberger from Germany, and I saw your film Dreams here, and I have a question regarding Dreams.
Shoot.
I did not quite understand why she found it necessary in the end to break his legs.
Oh, don't spoil the end. Come on.
But she could just have left him. So why was it necessary for her to do this?
Well, yeah, of course she could have just left, or she could have not do what she did to him before in the film. The other nasty thing she did, but well, that's how people are, you know. Did you, for example, I'll try to answer with another movie. Did you did you see Senso from Visconti? You remember that one?
No.
Well, at the end of Senso, the main character does something equivalent, even worse than what my character. We often hurt the people we love, and that fascinates me, troubles me. And I think she truly loves him, and that's probably why you have a hard time accepting it. But she hurts him because she loves him, and she's truly hurt because there's real love and passion. And of course, the film deals with a destructive, toxic relationship that escalates, unfortunately, until that to that degree. I discussed it with Jessica. She was very in favor of it since she read the script. I'm not sure now if on the draft she read it was her decision or the brother's decision. But I do remember that she said, there's no question about it. I want to be the one that, yeah.
Well, she is asked by her brother whether she wants it, and she wants it.
He asked, what do you want? She could have said nothing, let's just leave.
Exactly.
Well, that's love. Love, I mean, love can turn into a destructive force very quickly, unfortunately.
I was wondering whether the reason is that he crossed some boundary. Because there's, of course, power. Their relationship is based on her power, not on his power.
Yeah.
But in the end, he takes the power.
Well,
maybe that is the reason why she found it appropriate that he crossed the boundary.
I think you're right. You just explained it in a better way than I did. That's the logic behind it, for sure. But there's two ways to see it. Just the passionate, that's what how I replied, and then there's the logic. and you're right. On this power dynamics, the stakes are higher, and he crossed the line. But she crossed the line before, and so on.
Of course, all the time. But she thought she has right to do so.
Yeah.
Because he's underprivileged.
Yeah.
Because he's Mexican and she's American.
And there comes
that's the whole immigration
issue. There comes the other layer of the film, of course, that I like people figuring out for themselves. But there's a relationship between the two countries, of course, where one is on top of the other, and we know the score. We know who's on top. Yeah. Thank you.
I might even broaden the question, is crossing boundaries one of your long-term topics? It might be seen in a general sense in other films of yours as well, right?
I never do it just for the sake of it, or that should never be the case. But I can say that movies that I enjoy and books that I enjoy, the writers that are my favorite writers, often push their characters to extremes and to the limits, because I think that's when we learn more about human nature and about how our society works. So I'm not shy about it. It's sometimes interesting, for example, when I gave to Lorenzo Vigas, my good friend and colleague, director, we produced films together, when he read the draft for New Order, he told me, you're overdoing the end. He recommended to shoot an alternative ending in case I was going too far, and I told him, you're missing the whole point. It has to go all the way, because that's the nature of this movie. And I'm glad I did, of course.
Your question?
Hi, Christina from The Upcoming in London. I have a question about the movie as well. So, what inspired you to choose ballet as the art form?
It was, I had the idea to make this film for many years, and I always felt that it lacked something. And when we were shooting Memory on a lunch break, I wasn't planning on, but suddenly I was pitching or talking to Jessica about the film, and she liked it. So then I took it seriously, like, okay, this is the next film, I have to write it. And still something was lacking. And then I met Isaac Hernandez, the dancer, who's not an actor. He's considered the best dancer in the world. And I thought that would bring an additional layer, and it would somehow make this character more particular. And he's still an illegal immigrant, but with an interesting side to him, because he's a very talented person. So I just fell in love with the ballet quickly, easily. I'm not an expert on it at all, so I also saw it like as the opportunity to learn about that world. And then what's also interesting and something that I like about being a writer, director, producer is that originally the film was set on Texas. It was a story that would take place on Texas for a very simple reason. That's like where you would obviously run into this type of characters and xenophobia. And anti-Mexican, you know, feelings. And Isaac was the main dancer at the time at the San Francisco Ballet Company, and I thought I'll make my life easier, and I'll just use Isaac's life in San Francisco and the company, the ballet company, which was very easy to do. And then I had to have that interesting conversation again with Jessica, which was Texas and San Francisco are completely opposite. San Francisco is supposed to be a Democrat, liberal, and she immediately, she's very clever. She said, this is more interesting. This is less obvious. Because, you know, it's easy to say, I'm red, I'm blue, I'm better, and it's not that simple, you know. When people are tested, you might think you're a certain thing, and then you surprise yourself by betraying the values that you supposedly promote. Thank you.
Let's go for another question here.
Sorry, I have to return to the question of the gentleman over there, because I find it interesting that in this conversation between the two of you, you kind of omit the fact that the man violates the woman, and I'm sorry, it just kind of upsets me, actually, that it's not talked about. And for some people, that scene did not, or like they felt uneasy about it, that it was actually in the film, that the character went that way. And I was wondering if you can talk about it a little, like what was the, what was the logic?
Well, again, of course, that's a big mistake the character does. I think that's completely wrong, and that I guess is a point of no return, and that is a quick answer to why they do what it, you know, the stakes keep getting higher, and it's a destructive relationship, but they do that to him because he did that to her. When I was writing the script, I just found that was what the characters did. I always know when I'm writing a script what's the end of the story. I know where you know, the beginning and the ending, but I try to leave a lot of space for the characters to show me what should happen on the writing process. And the scenes seem impossible to avoid. Interestingly enough, Jessica she immediately understood why, and she agreed on it. Isaac had a much harder time doing it and playing it. Not only playing it, because the whole physicality for him is easy because he's a ballet dancer, but he didn't want to do it. Morally, it challenged him, and it's also his first movie, pretty much. So for an actor that's not an actor, it was even harder. I felt that it was correct. I mean, not correct. That it was the right thing for the film on two levels. One, that this couple, after she confesses what she did to him, the destructive dynamic, you know, it just couldn't be stopped. And that mirrors, again, what happens between the two countries. But I want to believe that everything that they do to each other is because of their own feelings and reasons, wrong reasons, and they make these mistakes. And then the relationship between the two countries should be something secondary, an additional layer that some members of the audience might go for or not. I hope I answered. It's also unpleasant for me. But again, then I go to those books, you know, like pretty much any Dostoevsky book where characters simply do wrong. And to me, it's interesting, if it's interesting, not just for the sake of it. I also know that making films nowadays that challenge the audience in this type of way, it's harder than before, harder than 10 years ago and than 20 years ago. And I find something appealing into not surrendering as a film director, into saying, well, times change, so let's make everything easier. You know what I mean?
Just to add more culture, when I watched the film, I didn't have the feeling that was wrong. Like, I actually thought it was maybe for him it was probably the only way he knew how he this was the way that he can really hurt her, and did it. But right now, when I got upset, I actually got upset more about the conversation about it and about this, like, what she did to him without talking about what he did to her. And the person who told me that they were uncomfortable with the scene was actually a man. So
the person that said what?
The audience member who told me he was uncomfortable with the scene was actually a man. So that was all very interesting to me. And right now, upsetting. I don't know why, but anyway. This just to give more color.
Well, that mirrors also in a way what I'm telling you about Jessica being more. It was easier for her to shoot than for him. I'm glad you're having, still dealing with the movie a couple of days after. That's for me. That's a big compliment.
It's interesting that you mentioned Dostoevsky in this context, because Crime and Punishment starts with a brutal act, and then the whole book follows. And now we are discussing some brutal ending of your films. So, could you comment a little bit further on this, maybe on your relationship to Dostoevsky or literature in general?
Yes, when filmmakers. Script writers ask me, what tip, how to become a better writer. I'm like, just read. But they don't read. It's crazy how people don't read. I mean, and it's impossible for me to understand how anyone would have a true appetite for writing if they're not readers. I'm not I wish I could read like my older sister that reads a book every week. I'm a kind of a slow reader, but I just finished Karamazov Brothers, and I can steal so much from these books, I'll just say it in that straightforward way. It's inspiring, It makes me as a writer, as a script writer, because I'm not a true writer, I would never publish a book, but it makes me want to become a better script writer. And Dostoevsky's insight into the mind and human nature and the dark side of us, and also the positive side. I mean, he's the best writer, and there's Tolstoy, of course, and there's many more. I love Philip Roth. I'm rereading now for the third time American Pastoral, and I also enjoy how good they are with words. That has nothing to do with cinema, so that's a separate joy. Above all, I love music. I think it's far superior than film or literature or anything else. And that's why my movies rarely have music. I love music enough to respect it and leave it alone, unless it really has to be used and belongs in a, has a real reason to be on a film.
And then you mentioned that Isaac Hernandez had a problem with doing the scene and going in this direction with the end of the movie. What happens in a situation like this, when one of your actors or actresses simply is dealing or struggling with what is there in the script? What does the discussion look like, maybe?
I promised him we would work it out together, but he knew from the very first draft he read that was going to be, that it was going to happen. But I promised that it could be dealt with in a different way, that we would work it out together, and it was like that. We don't do rehearsals, but I spent a lot of time with the actors. Isaac was driving me around San Francisco in his car, and we were spending long hours together, and we talked a lot about that scene. Part of his problem was saying that he said that by doing that he was kind of proving Trump right. You know how Trump keeps saying bad things about immigrants and all that. And I told him it's not that simple. It's not. Let's talk about the characters. Forget about the politics. And I also told him that this is a great opportunity to have a character doing things that are right and wrong. That's one of my main things about script writing. I don't like when on the first 5 minutes or 15 minutes of a film, they tell you who's good, who's bad, what's right, what's wrong, what's the goal. You know, they use these ridiculous terms like the journey of the hero and I don't know what. You know, that's the beauty, again, of reading a good book, that it goes to depth and surprises you. And I like that a character in a movie can be right and wrong at different moments. Yeah.
Do you want to follow some? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, can you tell us what were some of your inspirations behind like the wealthy San Francisco family? Were there any like families or like portrayals of such families that influenced you?
Let me try to remember. I know people like that in Mexico. I know people like that everywhere. And they're funny people because they kind of behave as if they're above of the rest of us, of society, and they're convinced that they're making collaborating at making a better world and so on, mainly because they're throwing money at things. But when they have to prove that by investing themselves, they often fail. Also, something that I find interesting about her character and the family that she belongs to is that it's easier to be a good person when you're wealthy and your life is easy and you never had to struggle. When Buñuel was often asked, especially in relationship to Los Olvidados, why he was showing these people under the worst light, or why were they so savage, he said anyone that's living in the streets with nothing, with the worst part of that people's nature will come out, because it's a jungle, it's a fight, it's primitive. It's not that they're bad people, because he was specially attacked by Mexicans because he was a Spaniard shooting films in Mexico. And here it kind of applies the opposite way. These wealthy people that often think that they are so good, like even when Jessica's character confesses what she's done to him, it's almost as she thinks that, again, with money, she'll keep helping him or something, and he's not looking for help, and he's got a lot of dignity from the beginning of the film. When he gets there, he's the moment that he's ill-treated because she feels ashamed to be seen with her in society, he splits. I mean, that's the point where the whole movie could have gone to a better place if she would have left him alone.
And just a quick follow-up. I remember after Berlin, I saw a couple of reviews that were saying like one of the parts that was like unrealistic was that Jessica's character doesn't speak any Spanish, because like she's like a rich woman who probably went to private school. And can you tell us a bit more about your decision for that?
Oh, but that's completely real. Hardly any average American or wealthy American they don't speak Spanish. I always tell my friends like Tim Roth, who's been living in Pasadena for 30 years, and his kids who were born there, I tell them, shame on you guys. Like, what's your excuse to not speak Spanish? You are dealing with people that speak Spanish every day. Like, come on, step up. And some even tell you, yes, we learned in school, but then I forgot everything. Well, that only shows that you have zero interest in not only the Mexicans, but in like kind of, and it's not the truth about Tim, of course. Tim's a very he's the opposite of that. But it does apply to most people. Like, how come you don't speak Spanish? Every American should be bilingual.
Thank you.
At least.
So what's his response?
Tim? Well, they all say, yeah, I wish I could, I'll try, but it's not true. Having said that, we shot with Tim in Mexico 600 miles, and he's always in Sundown in Acapulco, and Tim's always telling me, write more movies that we can shoot in Mexico, and he's all for other cultures and so on, and he's British, but I don't know, and Spanish is a great language. I mean, an additional reason to want to learn Spanish is simply for literature again, to read certain writers in you know, El Quijote or whatever, you know, Pedro Páramo. Yeah.
When you get some idea for a film or for just a topic, maybe, not the whole story, what do you do? Do you instantly go and write some notes down, or do you think about it and you dwell in the possible images and then something maybe comes out of it or maybe not? Or do you discuss it and then you develop something out of those discussions with maybe people who are close to you? Or how do you proceed?
Well, the first thing is definitely writing. Ideally with a pen, not on the phone, or not, you know, like to properly sit and write, because that connection, when I start writing, I start understanding my mind in a better way just by writing. And that's immediately when I see if that idea has potential or it shifts into something else. Long story short, yes, put it on paper, you know, put it on the writing. But then I might forget about what I wrote, or it might keep coming back on the next days and weeks. And it might start to turn into a story or into a film. I don't like to think that films are storytelling. I think that's a way that limits the potential of films, to say it's storytelling. Because, for example, New Order was a very hard film to just tell us a story. It's more of a exploration, I don't know, yeah, you know, on society, but I only sit and write a script if certain ideas or the world that I'm depicting has been on my mind for at least a couple of years. Like Dreams, I had the idea for at least 7 years. I never make you know, going to the writing and making of a film if I'm not haunted by it, and that normally it's years of a process. The only exception was Sundown. That film I wrote on the middle of a personal crisis. I was quite depressed for the first time in my life. I was experiencing some sort of midlife crisis, and I just wrote it very fast. I sent it to Tim, and he said, "Let's shoot it. Don't think more about it." And that was it. But it's, out of all my movies, the only one that I wrote fast.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I go back to hearing a little bit more about then what happens after the initial idea and maybe your research process, like very practically? How do you research topic, themes, to sort of make it your own? Often the ideas have to do with certain obsessions or fears or experiences I had. So the need for research is not the first thing, you know. And even if I'm writing about something that I don't know so well, like let's talk about memory. I didn't know that much about dementia, early onset dementia and all that. But before researching too much, I write the story or the possible film. And only when I have a draft, I start to do a lot of research, because I'm afraid that if I do it the other way around, I will lose my freedom. Often what I do is just write a draft and hand it to some expert on the subject matter, which is frightening, of course, because you might hear you're completely lost. But if that person who knows a lot about the subject matter says you know, it's basically plausible and interesting, then, you know, I'll correct and improve it, make it more interesting through research.
I think what's interesting is about a filmmakers, and I always my favorite filmmakers are those who have a full body of work, a big, large body of work. The thing is, okay, your first 2-3 movies are probably very personal, and you know, but what about the 5th and what about the 10th movie? You then need to be resourceful and come up with new combinations. In a way, we're always doing the same film over and over again. Yes, it's true to some extent, but the audience won't fall for that so easily. So I find that interesting, how to find the next movie after making a number of films.
At what stage of the work on the script other people do step in, other collaborators, I mean? For instance, your cinematographer. You work with KVIFF for a very long time. So when do you show to him the script, maybe?
Yeah, well, we shot 7 movies together. The 7th is now on the process of editing. I'm not going to talk about it because I never like, you know, spoiling, you know, any... Or distracting, you know, the attention has to go to the film, the current film. But to Eve, I only give it once it's ready. I think the only exception was New Order. He stayed at my home. When we shoot in Mexico, he stays at my place, which makes it a nightmare because we're talking about it 24 hours, you know, it's non-stop work. But we love it. New Order was hard to figure out. And whatever idea I had, the question was, is it, can we shoot that, you know? Because the film has 3,000 extras and everything, but we shot it with a limited budget. So I really needed Eve to pull it off. The person normally I don't hand out the script until I have a good draft. The exception is my sister, my younger sister, who's also a filmmaker. And the best example of it is Memory. I don't know if you saw it, but Memory was the first idea for Memory. So before I wrote the script, I talked to my sister and I told her, it's gonna be a revenge story. This woman runs into the guy that did her wrong in school and gets an opportunity because she's hired to you know, get it was a revenge story. And she said there's something a lot more interesting if you don't go there. Challenge yourself in a different way. And she was right. And I was also in a very kind of peaceful personal moment in my life, so that resonated, made sense, and so it completely changed. And Jessica always tells the story that when she was reading the script, when that moment arrived, she was ready to put down the script and say, I'm not interested in making this movie, because she knew the revenge story was coming. And 2 pages later, she was surprised to see that it went into a total different direction. And that's another thing about script writing. For me, it's very important. I was saying earlier about not knowing who's bad, who's good, who's bad, and what's the, you know, the obvious storyline. I take pride on saying that I think my films, you can't outguess what's gonna happen. I mean, when you know exactly what's happening on the next hour, for me, it's not stimulating. And what's hard about that is that you have to earn it. It has to be original, but without just being bullshit. You can't just, you know, surprise the audience by betraying the characters or doing whatever that makes no sense. So in the case of Memory, I think the film benefited from that conversation with my sister. It doesn't mean that we always agree. Sometimes I shoot something that even on the final stage my sister is strongly against, you know.
Yeah, go on, please.
Hello, I would like to ask about this script writing, because you just mentioned that this hero's journey is not really your cup of tea, and that you don't like in first 15 minutes to know who is the bad or good guy. But what is the replacement? Because when you don't have these kind of classical script followings, then when you want to get the money from some grant, then they will tell you the first 15 minutes doesn't work because we don't know who is the bad or good guy or what is the theme. So what are your way to break?
It's challenging to gather money for a film that's not straightforward. And then, yeah, when you go to pitch the film, they're exactly expecting that to why the character is likable and what are we gonna learn, and yeah, I mean all those. And it's also very dangerous that often people that are greenlighting films or financing films read Save the Cat, you know. So that's exactly, they think that they're doing their job by finding those answers, you know. And it's very limiting. Like good films cannot be done like that, you know. You don't watch Stalker or, you know, any good film. I mean, how do you pitch or how do you describe the Fireman's Ball, the Milos Forman? I mean, it's a crazy movie. It's you know, it's beautiful. It's chaotic. It's alive. Pitch that and you don't get a cent. And most of all, it's magic. It's Milos Forman doing his thing. An additional reason to why I make a film a year, mainly because I enjoy it, but it's also because I learned that the faster you go, it's harder for people to stop you, and it's easier for them to say, okay, keep going. You were just at the Berlinale, you were just at Venice, Peter got the award for Best Actor, here's money for your next film, you know? Like, if you wait 4 or 5 years for that excitement to fade, then it's harder to get back on the saddle. So that's part of why I always say better walk before you have to desperately run later on. When I got the money for New Order, it was government money and then an MG. I was surprised that I got the government money, but that's an application that they, you know, revise all the papers and synopsis and this and that, and we miraculously got it. And then when I went to the distributor to pitch it, I couldn't tell the story because I didn't understand the story. But I was telling, my pitch was, I swear to you, I know what I'm doing. I just don't know how to explain it. And they say, you know, here's the money, a limited amount of money. That's all we're going to gamble with your craziness. But go ahead. I think you earn it also with movie after movie, and that is interesting. When again, I like filmmakers whose body of work speaks more than just a film on its own. Yeah.
In case of New Order, film with such a political and revolutionary things going on, and with also like wild reactions to those films, how were afterwards the people from the Mexican Film Fund satisfied with it, and were most of the people you were pitching the project originally to were satisfied with the fact that they greenlighted it?
Before the controversy started, which I knew was coming, when I got the Silver Lion in Venice, I said to everyone, I mean to my friends and family, I said, this time I really needed an award because I know controversy is coming. So this kind of helps to say, come on, you know, it's not only me, you know, someone gave it praised it. Everyone that watched the film before the controversy had zero problems with it, wasn't puzzled by it. The controversy in Mexico was interesting because it started when the trailer came out, not because of the film. And I think the trailer didn't make justice to the film. The film wasn't well presented. Having said that, anyway, it was going to be controversial, and I wanted that. Not for the sake of controversy, but if I'm making a film about social disparity and about you know, dystopian break of society, you know, the breakdown of society because of social disparity. It has to trouble people. It has to confront people. So I was always flattered with it. And then it was funny that some people were saying, let's make sure this guy never makes another film again. And I had already shot Sundown. So, you know, also when all that controversy was happening, I was editing my next movie. I was shielded emotionally, and I was busy. And I couldn't care less about people saying, you know, like whatever they had to say. Yeah.
More questions here? Okay.
Hi, me again. Speaking of controversies, are you in any way worried that this film Dream might be misinterpreted or co-opted by certain American demographics, considering like it's coming out at such unprecedented times?
I'm not that stressed now because I rely on the reactions, the Berlinale, from the American outlets, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, IndieWire. They all got the film, and they got, you know, they understood that certain aspects that are troubling about the character's decisions or mistakes have to do with a bigger frame. I think they all got it. The film got very positive reviews. That doesn't mean that it's shielded. I hope there's going to be some controversy. Otherwise, it's boring. I love Pasolini. You know, his death, the assassination of Pasolini, I don't like. You know, it should never go that far. But controversy, yes. And Pasolini would always spend time on Italian TV arguing very interestingly about what Italian society looked like at the time. So, I mean, since I was 15, 14 years old and I took a serious interest on film, and I saw Buñuel and Pasolini and all these writer-directors, for me it always went hand in hand. I never thought, oh, I'm gonna grow up to shoot The Goonies, you know, or to adapt some selling book. To me, it was always about this.
Yeah.
I just wonder about your relationship towards Czech culture. You mentioned Ferrisman Ball, and maybe if you know some writers, if you are so much into reading.
And now I feel on the spotlight. Yeah, I'll skip that. Not because I'm gonna fuck up for sure on TV, but I love Czech cinema. Yeah, and literature too. But I don't want to get into a sand trap. Not that you meant it that way.
You like to film chronologically. Is it always possible, especially if the projects are like New Order, maybe complicated and big with extras and stuff like that?
The shooting is
yeah, shooting.
I always shoot in chronological order. Yes. In New Order, it was kind of easy if you think about it, because the first half of the film happens at the wedding inside a house. So that was easy. I mean, we had to shoot that. And then we start moving to different locations. But again, a big advantage of being a writer and the producer of the film is that, for example, when I shot Dreams, we keep control of all the locations throughout the whole shooting. The same for Memory in New York. So even if we have a smallish budget, I never get a location that I'm not allowed to return to. And the House of Dreams, for example, where she lives, that's white and with beautiful art objects, and there's not a single production design thing we did. That's how the house looks, period. So I lower the budget on production design. I just find locations that fully work. And when you're shooting like that, they always allow you to go back in if you don't destroy their place and if you're with a limited amount of people, you know. So that also allows me to reshoot whatever I'm not satisfied with. And there's a lot of reshoot in my movies. A lot of reshoots, yeah. Like 20-30% of what you end up seeing on screen, I shot twice on separate days. But that didn't make it more expensive. And these things, if I would try to explain them to a regular producer, they sound great. But when I talk to them, to new people that I'm collaborating with, they go crazy. They sound good like ideas, but then it's challenging to actually do it. But it's not that hard and it's not more expensive. And of course, they will kill me in a film school if I would say that this is the way of doing things. But why not? I think the thing that productions are lacking the most is common sense.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your basically on the production and your relationship with your producers? Are you working? I don't know if you're working with the same again and again, and that I could imagine that helps. But if we have producers in the room, I think they can tell us that it's also hard to produce that process that you describe, probably. But just could you tell us a little bit more about how do you? Yeah, basically you need to sort of keep the money coming in order to also be able to do the next, but you also need to do the next to keep the money coming, and that kind of process on the financial side.
So it's very important to tell you a little bit about my business partner, Erendira is her name. She's a producer. She was a coordinator on a film I produced. I didn't hire her. Because I always produce my film every year or every other year, and a couple of other films every year. Because it's also a way of keeping a crew, everything going, the machinery, so to speak. So I saw this girl, Erendira, who was a coordinator, and I liked her immediately. I felt good about her. This was in 2018, I think, or 17. And I told her, would you like to be my main producer starting tomorrow? And she was very young. She said, yes. Said, it's going to be, tricky and a lot of work. And I'm just asking you to do things my way, not to do them in a professional way. And she agreed. And since then, we shot like 20 movies already. So the reason why I can make 2 movies a year with other people is because Erendira, she does all the heavy lifting. And also when I have a script and I give it to her and she likes it and agrees and gives some input, of course, then she's the one making all the calls and getting all the usual suspects together again. So Erendira Núñez, she's, I couldn't do it without her, yeah, for sure, yeah. And sometimes I'm not gonna get into details, but people wouldn't imagine how low I can go on a budget and still make it work and look good, if I have to. If I can have more money, then I'm happy. But if not, I'll just tell everyone, mainly the actors, you're gonna get paid very little. If you wanna be a part of it, And then sometimes people tell me, why don't you push 6 months or a year or whatever to find more money? I say, no, because in a year I want to make another film. I think time is the most precious thing we have. So to just sit on the script because you need more money that you don't necessarily need, yeah.
And the same goes for projects of other directors, like you did, to mention some of those films, 600 Miles, La Caja, The Box, or Olmo, probably latest feature film produced. You go the very same way with them, like let's go to shoot it now, don't wait for more money, be more humble with it and so on?
Normally they want to work with me because they know how I work, so there's some understanding from scratch that, you know, we Erendit and I, we work on a very practical way. But when I collaborate with a director, I always try to adapt to that director and not the other way around. I mean, we have all kinds of stories. I just produced my sister's first film, her first feature film, and it's unbelievable how many locations she had. And I think a good producer, and that's what I tried with my sister, is to never say no, to always say yes, yes, yes. You know, whatever the director needs is yes, until, you know, it reaches a limit. But Olmo, for example, we co-produced with Plan B, with the American company, and they financed the film. So that was not challenging. What was hard, I guess, was to have Fernando do his thing, to kind of protect Fernando. That was my main job. Every case is different. Lorenzo Vigas couldn't be more, you know, we're not similar. That's why he makes a film every 8 years. But he's really talented. With his first film, he got the Golden Lion. So I try to help him, and that's it, to not get on his way.
Hi. So speaking of the locations, was the detention center also someplace you found instead of created on set?
Just let's be clear about the detention center. You mean the one in San Francisco?
Yeah, like
or
the one
in Mexico when he's
both actually. Like,
okay,
yeah.
so I'll tell you. The detention center in San Francisco, it's a former jail, a real jail that's not in use anymore, that they use for shooting a lot. So that was it. We don't see it much on the film, but yeah. Then in Mexico, I got lucky and they let me shoot in Tijuana on a real crossing point. It was very sad and dramatic because while we were shooting, we saw a lot of people that were truly deported. And there was no pre-scouting or anything. The permit was just, you have 3 hours to go in and shoot, you know. So we did the best we could. And then where there's a fire and all that, it's a little trickier. That's a film set in Mexico. So it's not Tijuana anymore. You know, magically, the film magic allows us to cross the street and we're inside a film set, but nobody notices. And there I did shoot for a long day and did the fire. And I like, what I like about that scene too, talking about the script, is that immigrants from Latin American countries are mistreated, and they start a fire, a riot, and that shows how Mexican authorities are also ill-treating other immigrants. You know, I didn't want to make the movie only where Americans are on top of Mexico and that's it. No, the ladder always keeps going down, unfortunately, and nobody learns. And that's based on a real case. About 4 years ago, 60 immigrants or 80 immigrants, I forgot the number, the exact number, but mainly Venezuelan immigrants they died, they burned, and the Mexican authorities, like in the film, they locked them. They said like, if you want to start a fire, you know, there you go. And they died.
Since you didn't have a permit and that like going in was your first time going in, what was like your reaction, your visceral reaction
to what?
To going into like the detention center in Mexico? What was your first like reaction to the place?
I've been into many places that I would never go if it wasn't because I'm looking at them as a film director that's about to shoot something. For example, when I shot Sundown, I spent a full day shooting. It was horrible, the worst shooting day of my life, on a slaughterhouse. And then none of the images ended up on the film. So I could have, you know, avoided that. It's the worst place I've seen in my life, slaughterhouse. But I shot many operations like surgeries and stuff. But when you're there doing, you know, job or research, I keep a cool mind and I try not to be, you know, to to use my mind more than my stomach.
You mentioned that the slaughterhouse scene was edited out. You're also editor of your films, not only a writer, producer, and director. So you keep the editing room for yourself to keep the control, or for keep the wheel running, as you have already mentioned, like for the film business, or for some very different reason from this?
Well, the main reason for me to be on the editing room is because I think it's the best part of the process. It's frustrating because it's not like writing where you can write anything. You have a limited, okay, to put it in better words, you can start exploring and understanding the possibilities that the material offered to you, and sometimes there's more than you imagined. But anyway, you shot what you shot, and I've never done reshoots afterwards. So that's it. That's, you got to play and build a movie with that. I work with, when I shoot in Mexico or also in the States, with a Mexican editor, Oscar Figueroa, who's 65 or something like that, and he's very experienced and skilled. So we edit together, and I listen to him, and sometimes I don't have enough patience to watch the 25 shots I did, the 25 takes, sorry. So I tell him, you do the dirty work and let me know if there's something I should watch, which is wrong, but again, making a film a year, my excitement is in the next one. So we collaborate together, we edit together. And a film can be totally shifted and saved or ruined on the editing, as everybody knows. I always try to make the films as short as possible. I think I'm one of the few directors that try to make them as compact as I can. There seems to be a trend where films are, 2 hours and a half or whatever. And I often think directors are just killing themselves, and again, making it more challenging for distribution. But mostly I take pride, and that's why I'm not interested in TV. I take pride in saying a lot with less resources and with less time, and hopefully to not make the same sin time and again. On a good film, a sin should never repeat itself. I mean, you're going through the same ideas and so on, but you know what I mean. It shouldn't repeat itself. And that can only be done on the editing. Bresson is one of my favorite directors. And he wrote the most important book for me. I didn't go to film school, but that book contains everything that one should know. And then you have Tarkovsky's book, Sculpting in Time, that it's the other side of. Those two books for me are sum up a lot of what a filmmaker needs to understand.
So could you tell us which film project was like the most different in editing room in comparison with your own script, where you maybe improvised in the editing room or changed order of things or so on?
In most cases, I play a lot and then I go back to the script pretty much. Sundown was trickier than that because what I learned is that the less time you spend writing, the longer the editing process is usually longer, because whatever you didn't exhaust or fully understand or whatever on the writing, you end up paying on the editing, and that was the case of Sundown. But Sundown, what I liked about the process also of shooting that film is I told the cinematographer and everyone else, I want to get lost. I want to be lost and found. I find myself and lose myself again. And for Tim Roth, that was very hard, a hard process, because actors want certainty. And that made the editing process longer too. But it's the film I like the most out of all the films I've done, I think. Dreams, to answer your question, Dreams is the one that was harder to edit and that I changed more. I can't go now into details, heavily into details, but it was a very different script, a very different story. I'll, for example, just say that when he showed up at the beginning, there was a long chapter that I ended up not using, where she would reject him immediately, and on the page it seemed fine, but editing, it took me months to realize I was killing the audience. If that couple didn't, you know, immediately want to have each other on the spot, the film wouldn't work, and that became a headache editing, because things didn't match, were not shot to be used that way. So Dreams was hard to edit.
Thanks for sharing it. And Sundown also, that's a film about character that is lost, kind of, and he's there on the beach finding some new opportunities maybe, and so on. So this feeling of being lost in the film and in the creative process kind of match.
Yes, yes. And again, I'm glad you're saying that. And again, because I wrote it on this personal crisis, I was also gambling with saying, I want to get into trouble as a filmmaker, you know, with myself and with the structure of the film. I was willing to make it hard on myself. The filmmakers I like the most, for example, Fassbinder, who would make 5-7 films a year, they made all sorts of different movies. They were not playing it safe. Of course, Godard was not playing it safe. And I hate this obsession with writing a script for a long, long time with all these rules and pitching it, then, you know, making sure that everything's in place. Like, unless it's the, you know, Space Odyssey or some Kubrick movie or Hitchcock, you're just killing everything that might end up being spontaneous and alive in the film. And I think it's good to know by heart what you're trying to do, but then you have to also be open to forget about that plan and to just lose yourself. And also I think that in most cases when directors and actors fight and have strong conflicts, is because directors are often, it's either because you chose the wrong actors, so it's not the right match, but it's often, and more interestingly to talk about, it's when the director is not willing to listen to the actors, and it's not willing to collaborate, because their logic is, I wrote the script, I thought about it, I've been on it for years, this is what we're doing. And it's a shame to do that, not because of the respect of including everyone. I'm not talking about that, because this is a dictatorship. You know, the director should do what she or he wants to do, end of story. But if you're a clever dictator, you listen to everyone, you use everyone's talent and brains, and they are there. Jessica is always saying, you know, use me, you know, like push me to the maximum capacity, you know, like she wants to learn something of herself that she hasn't found. And so we engage on that process, and in exchange, when let's say on 5% of the scenes, I do need the actors to okay, on this time I need you to stand here and turn and do this because that's what I want to do. When it's only occasionally, they say yes, of course, you know, because the rest of the time you're listening to them.
Can you talk? You said earlier that you don't actually rehearse the scenes, but you spend a lot of time together. Yeah. Could you elaborate, please?
Yes.
What's that process like?
Of course. So I try to read the script, or at least to go through every scene with the main actors months in advance, if we cannot afford to do it. For example, with Jessica. In the case of Memory, our first film together, I think it was December 22, like very close to Christmas, and we got together in her house, and we just read every scene together, and so she she would say, I don't understand this, or I disagree with that, or how much she likes something, or suddenly started to share something personal about her life that scene reminded her of. So it's just a lot of bonding and a lot of ideas that I might rewrite the script or not according to what we discuss. She never gets tired. After 7 hours, the husband said, let's have dinner. I said, yes, thank you, like, get me out of here. And after dinner and a glass of 2 or wine, I was ready to leave to my hotel. And she turned to me and said, shall we keep going? We still need 20 pages. And yeah, she's like that. But that's good, because then when you're on set, you don't have the actor saying, I don't understand this, and 50, the whole crew, you know, 50 people waiting for a one-on-one discussion on whether that's the right line or not. So I try to do that beforehand. And I try to do it, before I used to get all the actors together for that kind of table reading. But now I find it more interesting to do it separately, because, for example, talking about memory, Peter and Jessica never talked about the film before we shot. So it's not only that we didn't rehearse, but they never talked about it. They didn't know what the other one thought about it. And I didn't know what Jessica was going to do. She didn't tell me that she was hardly even going to say good morning to Peter. So she would, we have no trailers. I don't hire trailers, because I find that, you know, a huge lack of sense to have those huge vehicles dragged around the city, you know, and then you cannot shoot in a certain location because there's no parking for the thing. So it, again, common sense. So we have green rooms, which means just a space where the actor can be waiting. And Jessica would hardly say good morning. She would just go into her room and keep it all to herself. Of course, I was on that room for long hours talking to her. And also, I trust my cinematographer so much that I let him... the way I work with actors is we don't rehearse. We get in the morning on set, and I tell Peter and Jessica, or Isaac and Jessica, show me what you would do. Like 1, 2, 3, action. You know, just do it. Just let's see instinctively what happens. And I don't direct them. So they do the scene. And if it's interesting, if there's something to shape, I say something, they do it again, they ask questions. I bring in the cinematographer. We look at it again. We say, what's the best angle to shoot this? Because we always try to get it on a single shot. And then when we kind of understand that it seems like it's going to work, we let them go to makeup and wardrobe. The cinematographer has time to light the room and get everything technically ready. And then they come back and we shoot. We shoot the rehearsal, which means that on the editing, I would say I shoot an average of 15 takes. So it means that I usually take the second to last, or the last, or the first or second. Usually the 10 takes in between are not the best. So it was better when I didn't start directing it and it was fresh and good, or when I corrected it and we found something different, and it's take 15. Yeah.
Do you yourself have some acting experience?
I wish I could act, but no. I mean, I tried, and I'm terrible at it. I really can't. I've been invited even to play myself, you know, because there's this thing where many people are making comedy where people play themselves. I can't even do that. So no. I wish I could, because when I see directors that are writing for themselves and playing what they wrote, that's perfect. You know exactly the tone, but I just can't.
What I really admired in your films is that the camera is exactly at the right point, and I feel it's always like the right distance from the actor towards the camera. And I'm surprised that now it seems a little bit improvisation, because I thought that you plan a lot before how the shot will look like. But now you are talking that there is just 30 minutes of thinking in the room, and then one shot, one take, or more takes, but just one long shot. So I'm just curious, maybe also in technical way, like the lenses or how you think, how you will do it, something like that.
It's certain scenes do need to be prepared, and we know exactly what we're gonna do, the cinematographer and I. But it's been a very long process. On my first movie, Daniel and Ana, I had storyboards and everything was perfectly planned. Also, I shot it on 35 millimeters, so you know I had a limited amount of material to shoot. Lucia was also, everything was kind of planned, or I tried to be prepared. Chronic was interesting because I don't know if you saw that movie, but Tim Roth is playing a caregiver, and to be ready to shoot the film, he worked long months in advance, like 4 or 5 months, as a caregiver. So often he would show us the reality of it, and we also have an advisor, like a professional caregiver on set to show us how to do it. But Tim knew by the time of the shooting how to do it. So often the camera angle would favor what we needed to see regarding that. New Order was complicated because, for example, the scene where the house, the wedding is attacked, where they jump that scene we rehearsed at least 3 weekends before shooting. So we would go every Sunday, first just with the main actors, and then with secondary actors, but because the cinematographer and I, we didn't understand how to shoot it. So we and we knew we couldn't do it on the day with 100 extras and so on. And there's shooting and everything. We thought we couldn't pull it on a oneer without cutting. But because we rehearsed 3 or 4 Sundays in advance and we kept including more people, adding people to it, we were able to pull it on the shooting. So sometimes we do, when I say everything we decide on the spot, it's not entirely true. There are some, or Chronic, the ending, no? That very long take. Well, that we had to block so many intersections in Los Angeles, so that was carefully planned. But when we're shooting, for example, talking about Dreams, once they move to Mexico, or the whole, all the scenes at her apartment, we don't plan anymore. We know we're there anyway. And if the cinematographer kind of did a pre-lighting work, or he requires not a lot of time for each scene, and that's it. We just find the best position. And then we talked about Sundown. I was really wanting to lose myself and get into trouble. But when I say get into trouble, I'm talking about putting Tim Roth in the middle of that beach with no extras, like just on a real environment. Maybe we had 10 extras to control the, to be closer to the camera, but the beach was overcrowded with 1,000 people. And often people would get in the frame and say something to him or try to sell him something, and they're all in the film. And Tim was very upset. It was very hard, a very frustrating process for him. Because it's easier for an actor to say, yeah, let's play, than to actually do it, Because if the improvisation or the, whatever happens, it's a fortunate one, that's good. But if it's a drunk that comes in on the frame, and I'm not saying cut, and he gets pissed, but he's professional, so he'll stay in the scene, and then he'll tell me to fuck off afterwards. But he'll hold it, So that was fun. Yeah.
So, are you going to work together
with Tim?
again?
Yeah. Absolutely. I learned a lot from Tim. My Chronic was shot after Lucia. And after Lucia is a film that I shot in Mexico with a very small budget and tiny cameras. And suddenly the next movie was with a much larger budget in Los Angeles with Tim Roth. And he protected me throughout the process. He understood better than I what I wanted to do. And I learned a lot of acting and of filmmaking with Tim. The only thing I keep telling him is the next movie we make together somehow has to be completely different than Chronic and Sundown. I don't know what that means, but I need to write something completely different.
On another note, what music do you listen to? What's on your playlist these days?
What?
Music.
Music.
Yeah.
Sorry,
you mentioned music,
deaf,
so I'm curious.
Music. Yeah, like I said earlier, I love music, but it has to be used. I hate when I'll say it the other way. You know, I'll explain it with the way music is usually used in films. It's like a lubricant to feelings, right? Everything that wasn't achieved by the script or the actors, let's just put some music and, you know, make it. Or because I want my movie to be 2 hours and a half, music will help break the rhythm. I'm like, come on, better make it work. Don't use the music or overuse or misuse the music. Having said that, on Memory, A Whiter Shade of Pale, that is used like 4 or 5 times, it's used for a reason and it's part of the story. So it's an important element on the film. New Order starts with Shostakovich, and it's important way to open the film and to let the audience kind of know what they're getting into, because I figured if I would start the film just with a wedding, it's kind of coming from left, you know, like why that suddenly happens. But if we have this montage with the music at the beginning, then I'm not misleading the audience. And I think you always have to be fair with the audience. You have to surprise them, but you have to, there's some sort of contract where you can't betray them. I don't know how to explain that in a better way. Dreams has music. Well, there's a lot of music because of the ballet. That, you know, that's just there. And then there's music when they go on that trip, and the same music I use at the end. But it's a very subtle use of music, I believe. I'm not against music, of course. My favorite directors like Fellini. What would be Fellini without music? It's also hard to use music properly. It's not easy to make good use of, interesting use of music. I'm now editing my new movie, and again, I'm using some classical music. Why not, right? It's if the joke was on me when I used Shostakovich because I thought it was gonna be free of rights, and it's super expensive. So now I make sure it's old enough.
But maybe the question was also meant outside of films. Like, what do you listen nowadays?
Yeah, I was babbling for 30 minutes. What I listen to, well, some classical music for sure. When I'm writing or reading, it's mostly classical music or jazz. But I'm ashamed to say I'm still listening to the same records I bought when I was 12 years old, you know, to Bob Dylan and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles, and yeah. And I don't want to sound negative about, you know, rock is dead, but it kind of is. It's hard for me to find interesting new stuff, and I can't listen to reggaeton. So yeah, I'm still listening to old music mainly, and a lot of Mexican music. I love Mexican music. No. I mean, when Beck or Air or a band like that uses electronic elements, you know, in the 90s when I was listening to, what was the name of that band that sang, I was going to say the name of the song, but it sounds terrible nowadays. But yeah, so electronic aspects of it, but I'm not your date to a rave. Don't invite me to Ibiza. Yeah, yeah. But electronic music, when it was really interesting, like when even Kubrick was playing with it, toying with it, and you know, that was electronic music can definitely be interesting, yeah. And for a movie, it can definitely work. But a movie should always be edited without music, and then if it really needs it, you should add it. Now, music, I think life without music is boring as hell. So I've music all the time, when I'm showering, before sleeping, when I wake up. Yeah.
I've lost completely notion of time, I have to admit, so I don't know whether we are... Okay, time and space for last two questions.
It's good. I like this conversation. It went to very, you know, I think I never done such a free, a true conversation. Yeah, yeah.
And you're a great audience here.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, any more questions regarding? We went through this preparation, script writing, producing, editing, almost all of it.
What's your favorite thing about filmmaking?
About filmmaking, it became my. It's my way of living. For good or bad, all I do is make movies. So it's either very pathetic and it means I have no life, or it means that my life is film and I just surrender to it. I think it was Bukowski, no, that said, "Find what you love and let it kill you." So yes, everything in my life is about the next movie and about enjoying films, and I like this way of living. So it's everything. It's hard to split it. But again, having said that, I'm okay watching just one film a day. I don't need 10. I don't need an overdose of films. Did I answer the question?
I think so.
And do you enjoy presenting your films? Like
and I guess there's also an ego trip about it, of course. I mean, it's nice to write something and have people helping me do it, and then having people talk about it, you know. So I never gone to therapy. I just make movies. Sorry, you were saying something?
If you enjoy to present it, like, hello audience, this is what I was working on for some time, and I'd love to hear your reactions and so on. If you really enjoy it.
I do when it's the premiere of the film, or even better, when it's the second screening of the film. Dreams was screened at the Berlinale, and this is the second time I show it. So I'm very curious to listen to your thoughts, and when you say that certain things are troubling for you, and so on. I'm very interested because I don't make films for myself. I make them for audiences, for people. It's an exchange. So yes, absolutely. But to discuss after Lucia or Sundown, I feel that it's not even me who made the film, you know. I'm a different person 10 years afterwards. I take responsibility and I can talk about it. But sometimes I don't even remember the movie that well because, of course, I've never seen the films again because that's boring as hell. The fun is to make a new one, you know. So yeah, I enjoy. There's nothing more painful than having done shot two movies, and have to promote the film that's just coming out. That's horrible because you're like making an effort to remember who you were and where I was in life. So that's hard. Also, I like when people are questioning me and when it's truly challenging. But when you start an interview and it's again, so tell me why you wrote this film. Yeah, you know, it's like, come on, you can Google that. You know, I answer that 100 times. But when it's a good conversation, I love it. And I love to. I think it's Tarkovsky. There's one very nice story about Tarkovsky talking about a screening of The Mirror, where he's once the film finished, the audience was having conversations about the meaning of it, and some were attacking Tarkovsky, and you know, if we imagine the context, it was surely very heavy and serious, and I think the cleaning lady that watched the movie because she was there wanted to go home, and she said, "Are you all stupid? The film's very simple. It's about this and this and the life of this man," and Tarkovsky couldn't agree more. She was So she said, that's the film he made. He agreed and said, just go home. Like, yeah. So I like that too, you know, when films are not necessarily have to be, you know, from an intellectual, you know. I like when it, after Lucia was a very rewarding experience because it was seen by 1 million people in Mexico. It sold 1 million tickets. So I was surprised because I made a small, tiny budget film that nobody wanted to back. It got the award at Cannes, but mainly it got many tickets sold, and it was screened at schools. And then it was also fun that, I mean, funny, like crazy that people were asking me, so what do we do to stop bullying? I have no idea, you know. I know nothing about bullying. I just made the film because I'm equally troubled as you are about it. But yes, movies are for people. That's why I'm also, it's a bittersweet thing with streaming, because the watching Dreams, I didn't sit through the screening of Dreams the other day, but I see like 5 minutes at the beginning and 5 at the end. And to be in a room with so many people, you know, that's very, very nice. Well, thank you very much. It was lovely. We can do it again tomorrow if you want.
Thank you very much.
We'll make it again in 4 years. I'll make more movies so we have new things to discuss.